TomoNews presents Overwork. Auld Lang Syne takes on a whole new meaning in Japan. A Japanese security firm is working on a music drone to help curb the crazy overtime Japanese workers put in. Overwork in Japan is a major health and societal problem. The drone by Taisei will reportedly play Scottish folk song Auld Lang Syne whenever it's time to punch out. It will perform sweeps of office buildings, and should it detect workers staying late, it'll let rip with a popular New Year song. As if that isn't enough, the drone will also be kitted out with video cameras to record anyone working past finishing time. Auld Lang Syne was penned by renowned Scottish poet Robert Burns in 1788. Wonder how he'd react to this news.
Man suffers stroke after 84-hour work week. Company won't pay. Cai Baoqiang was a famous surgeon and was highly in demand 5 years ago. No, he's not dead, but he did suffer a stroke 5 years ago. Dr. Cai's wife is suing Qimei Hospital in Tainan for refusing to pay overwork benefits to her husband. Taiwanese law requires companies to pay 3.5 years of a worker's salary if the Council of Labor Affairs finds that the employee died due to overwork-related medical complications. Qimei Hospital is refusing to pay that amount to Dr. Cai and his wife because he isn't dead. 5 years ago, after an 84-hour work week, Dr. Cai collapsed in the operating room and suffered a severe stroke that left him with diminished mental capacities. Due to the lack of oxygen in his brain, Dr. Cai has been left with the mental capacity of a 4-year-old. He needs to be fed and reminded to take his medication. His wife is now his full-time nurse. A hard-working attitude is important in Taiwan, which ranks among the top countries with the longest working day. On average, Taiwanese employees work about 2,200 hours annually. That's 20% more than Japan and the US, according to government data. The problem is that trade unions are nearly non-existent or too weak, and existing laws and penalties are too light. Stepping up fines or jailing is too little and too late when the worker has already died. An average of 50 people die due to overwork in Taiwan every year. Mrs. Cai is seeking up to $250,000 US. She says that it isn't fair that the hospital refuses to compensate her family simply because her husband didn't die from overwork. It was the overwork that caused him to suffer the stroke, and she has lost the spirit of the man she loved. Realtek's former chairman died from overwork. Li Caozheng, the former chairman and deputy general manager of Realtek Semiconductor Corp in Taiwan, was found dead last Friday on the ground level of the company dormitory. He was only 50 years old. Police and investigators suspect that it was a case of overwork. Li was known as an extremely hard worker, often spending 12 hours at work each day and living in the company dormitory for more than 10 years. Under Li, Realtek became the first firm in the world to integrate analog, digital, and memory modules into microchips, beating out global industry powerhouse Intel. Li had worked for Realtek for 24 years. Li fell 8 stories from his dormitory balcony to the ground level. His daughter called emergency services. Doctors were unable to revive him. Investigators suspect possible overwork, which is what caused Li to faint, or it may be that Li committed suicide. Police are still investigating the reasons behind Li's death. 7-month pregnant nurse falls into coma due to overwork. Taiwan's overwork problem is terrible, and incidents where companies simply work their employees to death are rising. In Jiayi, a city in southwestern Taiwan, a female nurse suffered a stroke and fell into a vegetative state after a month in which she worked 135 hours of overtime. The nurse, identified by her last name Chen, worked as an intensive care unit nurse and was 7.5 months pregnant. However, due to a shortage in personnel, management scheduled her to work the night shift. During one of her shifts, she began vomiting and collapsed a few hours later. This was because a blood vessel in her brain had burst, causing her to have a minor stroke. As she was working, Ms. Chen did not rest or go see a doctor, despite being surrounded by them. She collapsed towards the end of her shift. Ms. Chen fell into a vegetative state, and a month later, her baby was delivered via cesarean section. The now single-parent father and her family are suing the hospital for $600,000 US. As Ms. Chen was in her 3rd trimester, by law, no employer can force a pregnant employee to work past 10 p.m. The hospital has refused to pay anything to Ms. Chen's family, claiming that they were not obligated to follow Taiwan's overwork laws because Ms. Chen was still being kept alive by machines. And if her family chooses to turn off the machines, Ms. Chen's death will not be the responsibility of the hospital. But no amount of money will be able to provide her newborn child with a mother.
Employee dies from overwork after supervisor bombards her with orders via WhatsApp. A 40-year-old Taiwanese PR worker died from overwork after being constantly pestered with additional tasks, sometimes even after midnight, by her boss via WhatsApp. And even after she returned home from work, her manager would allegedly send her repeated messages using WhatsApp, barking marching orders well into the wee hours of the night and asking that the work be finished immediately. Eventually, the poor unidentified employee's body simply couldn't take it anymore. She suffered a stroke outside her office building at some point last year between May and June and passed away a month later after falling into unconsciousness. The Taiwan Bureau of Labor Insurance on Thursday announced the results of an investigation confirming that the poor woman had died of overwork.
Washington State bus drivers don't have time to take a number one. Have you ever had to go to the bathroom really bad? Could you work a job where you had to resort to wearing adult diapers or just piss yourself in order to keep on schedule or simply because there was no bathroom available? Washington State bus drivers are forced to do just that due to a lack of bathrooms and breaks on their routes. Maintenance workers say that they regularly remove 60 take or give urine-stained driver's seats every year. Doctors say that this can cause long-term damage to drivers' kidneys and urinary tract. It also doesn't do anything for their focus on the road if they're doing the potty dance as they attempt to navigate rush hour traffic. What to do? It's a messy situation, but someone's got to clean it up.
President Obama is pushing to expand overtime eligibility to more Americans. The Obama administration plans to raise the wages of Americans who work more than 40 hours each week by requiring their employers to pay them for overtime. Currently, employees with an annual income of less than $23,660 and who work more than 40 hours a week are entitled to overtime compensation. Obama is pushing to expand overtime eligibility without congressional approval by changing U.S. Department of Labor regulations. Once new regulations are implemented, the eligibility threshold will be raised to $50,400 a year, allowing more Americans who work more than 40 hours a week to receive overtime pay. The overtime rule change will be implemented in 2016. The Department of Labor estimates that it will affect nearly 5 million workers. When the proposal is published, there will be a comment period where the public can give their opinion on the policy.
Deputy director dies at his desk at work. Overwork is a serious concern in Taiwan because it can literally kill employees who have been worked beyond their physical limits. A recent example is Deputy Director Chang, age 51, who died at his desk earlier this week. Deputy Director Chang worked for Taiwan's Legislative Yuan under Director Wang Jingping. According to colleagues, the deputy director was fine when most of them finished and headed for home. Deputy Director Chang said he had some things he needed to finish up and was going to work overtime. It appears as though he decided to take a nap on his desk and never woke up. As coworkers returned the next day, they assumed the deputy director had spent the night at the office, a common enough occurrence. It wasn't until later when one of them noticed that Deputy Director Chang wasn't breathing. An autopsy will be performed to determine exactly how the deputy director died, but current speculation is that he died from overwork and heart complications.